All right. Had to take a week off, sadly, although it was a bit of an all-over affair last time out at Fuji. This time we aren't at Fuji. We are instead at Circuit Spa Francorchamps. The iconic corners of El Rouge and Radion will always be a glorious section to witness on lap number one. Tonight we've got 3 hypercars and 7 GT3s. How are you feeling about this one? Yeah, Spa, amazing circuit for racing action, but obviously very different style of racing action across the categories. In terms of hypercars, that main way of overtaking is up that main straight, whereas in the GT3s, this circuit just is always electrifying. One of the main reasons why I love the 24 hours at this circuit is the GT cars can just make it work across the entire circuit anywhere. It's basically an overtaking point because it's all hard enough braking zones. But we're about to get into qualifying with these GT3 cars first before we head to the hypercars in the back end of the session, as we do keep them split apart so they get their own unique time to do some laps. Right now, we've got a yellow flag out in sector number 1, but the drivers not too worrying about that as they are yet to start a lap. Gonna get a couple opportunities, but this is definitely one of the longer lap times these GT3 cars are gonna have to go through, as Aaron Chong has ended up spinning it at the top of the hill and sadly having to return to pit lane. That's going to delay his start and his attempts out in qualifying. Obviously, with RTGs available, they probably still can get out a lap in this session, but it will just put him out of sync compared to everybody else, as we see Alexa Gates. First time not winning a race last time out at Fuji, but still dominating the championship standings with 3 race wins under the belt in going into the second half, hoping to keep that domination going. Lamborghinis are always a beautiful car to watch, especially in this livery that Alexa Gates is running. Coming up the top of Radion, that's the first part of the lap down. It's now just a long straight where the cars really get to put their power and then put all that brake horsepower to use and try and stretch their legs before hitting the braking zone. Gotta be careful on the brakes. Don't want to over put the pressure, as you've got to make sure you get far back over to the right to keep the sequence going. But on these GT cars at these slower speeds, it's a bit of a longer section, so you have more time to make up for mistakes on your line. Then we have this double winding apex corner. Gotta make sure that you keep it nice and tight, but you do want to hit that as a double apex to keep the momentum going. And as it gets a little bit more trickier, we now have this off camber corner, very tricky for drivers to make sure that they are nailing. But in these GT cars, just got to make sure that the entry is nice and smooth and the power on out. Make sure you keep it tight on the exit again to minimize the amount of length of the circuit that you are going over, just to keep it nice and short for yourself, as these cars really benefit from short circuiting this track just due to how long these corners and the radiuses are. Going through the last bits of the tight and twisty sections now as we head into the final and third sector. Gonna have a long old run coming out of this corner. You will have one more corner where you have to lift off for before that final bus stop chicane that people always find very, very difficult, especially considering that chicane has some massive sausage curbs. But everyone loves to run very uptight through. But as we watch them sail through this corner, a little bit of a lift if you're daring, sometimes a little bit of brake if you're playing it cautious, especially on higher fuel loads. But on these lower fuel
Oh,
loads, should be fine for Alexa Gates to settle through. As going through the chicane, you just need to keep it neat and tidy to round out the lap. It's such a neat little section, but it kind of punishes you after your tyres are aching after such a long lap. But when you eventually cross the line, you can finally settle down as a 2:22.0 is the first lap win out from McEwen, as we see Alexa Gates hit the timing line of a 2:20.623. Here in WEC, we do got to remember, same with the GT3 24 hours, the timing line isn't quite the same as it is within the F1 races here.
yeah, I think really showing a couple of drivers. I think actually Gates have making invalid laps. That's unfortunate for Alexa from there, but it looks like Medavit has got the first one line half a second above everyone else. But the Corvette definitely is a little bit better in terms of just seeing a couple bit of flashes from Bender. Probably being told we're talking about. Just showing that I think one of the things to note today is that McLarens do have a bit of a struggle up here. These be one of the fastest cars actually in the prior patch, but we've had BOP changes since. It's actually slowed down the McLaren quite significantly at the circuit, and now it's a little bit squirmy coming up this car. And actually, you can see already half second down the first sector alone, so Binder's having a little bit of problems keeping the car on the track. And again, it's going to be something to really look about. They do have soft these tire GTs won't have separate tires. We will see when the hypercars get into play the softer tires being available. It's one of two tracks in sector 1. We actually have a yellow flag coming out there. I'm just gonna have a look for it.
Yeah, it seems like it was potentially for Ready, as it does actually nicely with the system flag up who ends up having the incidents on the scoreboard, as this new graphics give us a nice little chance to take a look at a replay if it does want to function for us, but always temperamental as they stand with the replay systems. But going back to the two McLarens, Binder and McEwen have had some amazing racing across the season as well, especially across, I think, 2 races ago. They had a very tough bout out at Monza.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been tough for a lot of the GT grid at Monza and later on at Fuji. So it's going to be good to see if they can actually take some fight with it, get these McLarens into the play, because they're going to have a very difficult time, especially when you've got people like and actually Alexis finally put something on the lap there with a 2:19.5. Sec faster than anyone else, so it'll be quite difficult for the others to have a go. So let's see if they can do it.
Oh yeah, amazing lap time out for Alexa Gates. Always a start in terms of the lap time, as we still see Bender struggling to keep it on track a little bit on this lap. Hopefully having a little bit of a cool down lap before going at it again. 1.5 seconds down that final sector shows how much more room they have left to keep it clean. But Mukdavit now got a huge task to find 1 second to catch up to Alexa Gates on their next lap.
Yeah, currently in the garage at the moment. We actually have 2 cars on track. Right now, McLaren's actually has the lowest in virtual fuel tank. We can actually see the full virtual fuel tanks for you guys. Currently have a green first sector, so we'll be looking to push. Has slightly lower fuel. We also have Aaron Chong pretty much on incredibly low fuel, trying to get something out of it. I mean, these cars generally do really well. The more laps you get, the more laps you put on them, up to about 5 laps. I think it's like 3 to 4 laps. They are at their peak potential. So right now, we're in the last part of the session. We are going to be seeing the fastest times coming now, and we do actually see now that a couple of the cars are already in. So Alexa and Madavit are already in the garage. They won't be able to do another lap because it's so hard, so long to do an out lap. So these are going to be the last times coming through at the moment, and currently at the moment, Aaron Chong's got 2 green sectors, and looks like he's gone off there, probably an invalid lap, as Aaron Chong has currently 2 green sectors right now. Quite a lot of improvement, there's very, very little left in the fuel tank. Let's see if they can do anything here.
That lower fuel tank number will give them a lot more top-end speed, just because the car is running that little bit lighter. will hopefully gain a bit of time through this final sector as well. It's got a huge improvement to find to catch up to Freddie Wally in that Porsche in front, but has already found 9/10 for that first sector. You just need to keep it clean through this final corner and not run it too wide to keep that lap time validated as it comes across the line. It is a 2:24 improvement, but slow in that final sector and still down in P7 for now.
Yeah, got a lot slower in that third sector, so potentially had a bit of an issue there. So that's a bit unfortunate for Marin, keeping at the seventh position at the rear of the grid. You can see a couple more drivers coming in. 30 seconds left. Actually, Binder actually has enough to go for another lap after this. There's 30 seconds on the clock left for them until, oh, that's a bit of a wide coming out the final part of, I don't know if that's going to be really helping their times going across the line and going up into second place with a 220.5. But quite a bit away from Alexa. I think Alexa is really showing that they are in charge of this qualifying, but we'll have another lap coming available for John. It'd be very interesting, actually, because we're thinking the hypercars are going to be coming out now. So we are at a point now where hypercars are now starting to exit the pits. Oh, dear!
Oh, massive spin for Binder into the wall at the top of our Rouge and Radion. Ends up putting it into the wall. We'll have to return to garage and get out of the way. No final opportunity for them, but still able to snipe the gap of Mukdavit for third. As we switch over our focus now to the hypercar category, it's always a bit more difficult to get the lap time out of these cars as they just go that much more quicker. And this is a circuit where that lap time difference really starts to show, as typically you see lap times 2 minutes 3 or lower in the hypercars. As we ride on board with Fisher in the Toyota, got 3 different manufacturers today: Cadillac for Coffin and the Ferrari for Zabida. It's going to be an interesting affair because we've seen that Ferrari driver have really good pace later in stints, but they haven't been the strongest of qualifiers, and it's been a few weeks since we've seen them in the competition. So hopefully they come into this ready and already warmed up in practice, because they might be a little bit cold of competition.
Yeah, it's good to see more drivers coming back into hypercar. We had a bit of a slow spell of drivers, but we're back with 3 drivers, so we will be having a bit more tussling. I'm actually going to bring it back actually to that incident that we saw at the top of Radion as we look on board. Oh, maybe not. We're just going to see an unfortunate spin. It was one of those that was very, how can I say, difficult to cope with. Let's go back with some of the drivers. Actually, we're seeing looks like Zuzuba is actually in the pit, so may have had a bit of an issue. I'll have a look for that.
Yeah, as we run on board with the Toyota, you're going to see just how different these lap times can be around this circuit between the hypercars and the GT3 cars, as these cars absolutely send it up the hill compared to the GT cars, where you just need to keep it nice and planted. I think the biggest difference, though, is if you ever get wet weather, these cars really perform differently, as you get a huge twitch coming out of Fisher in that last corner. But hopefully that doesn't impede their exit speed too much, as they now get started with their flying lap. 7 minutes 40 on the clock and a whole length of the circuit to go around again. Coming through that first corner, we see in the background the Cadillac getting very twitchy and potentially onto the curb as well, which gives them plenty of clear space in this Toyota to attack this hill by themselves. Keep it nice and planted, keep it over to the right as much as you can, but you don't want to hit the divot on the curve, because these cars react so heavily. As you see it jumping up and down, coming up the top of the hill, it's going to be late on the brakes for this braking zone. As late as you dare, you definitely want to brake after you hit that marking on the outside curb, but you need to keep it nice and tight through this section, as the exit here will pay dividends down this slight little short straight. But it's really good at gaining you extra lap time. You want to turn in early, because if you turn in too late, you miss out on the opportunity to take it as a nice little neat 2 apex corner in these higher downforce vehicles, and then we swing it on through again before we head down the hill. We very rapidly start to descend again as we head to the off-angled corner, which is a little bit different of a line in the hypercars. You want to run it out wide, you want to use all of that aerodynamic performance and keep the minimum speeds up way higher than in the GT cars. It's so much more important to try and hit these apexes and run it wide to keep the minimum speed up, whereas in the GT cars you can keep it a little bit shorter, as this run will very quickly wind on out and we're going to head to the final section of the corners. It's a good middle sector from Fisher so far, a little better than Xander behind, but did lose out in that first sector, only having green for the moment. Zuba will be on a lap time relatively shortly as well, as he sails through that final corner flat as you dare in certain cars, especially if you're running a high enough downpour package. But it's these corners, you need to hit the curb, but you don't want to hit the sausage curb on the inside, otherwise you're going to send yourself flying. And towards the line, Fisher will set this precedent lap time of a 2:02.991 in that Toyota, but only 700s behind Xander Coffin with a 2:03.6 is the benchmark. Super's going to be a little bit further around the circuit, but these drivers will try and find enough for lap time again.
Yeah, it's good to see a little bit of competition there, faster in the Sector 1 and Sector 3, so have Toyota maybe showing a little bit better in terms of top speed potential compared to Xander in the Cadillac. So interesting to see that. I think we'll see how that goes in terms of throughout the session. I will say right now, Lucas has a little bit less fuel than what we see on Xander. So I think Xander's probably going for 3 laps here, and I think Lucas just going for the 2, as you see a wide coming out there from the Cadillac behind. And actually, if we say that, going into Rivage, going too wide and validating the lap, that's going to be really unfortunate in terms of Fisher trying to do something. And that means that Coffin might have another chance already.
Yeah.
Already
Hopefully
better
not
in Factor 1.
invalidating the lap time with that excursion through that final sector, but gets a purple in the first sector to the name, and decent improvement, but only about 1/10 found so far. But coming through this sector, this Cadillac will struggle unless you've got a higher downforce setup through this sector. The Cadillac's always been known for that grunt power, especially in real life, but the game balance of performance can change that up slightly compared to how it works in real life. Right now, on their second lap time, so it's going to be nice to see if they can keep finding improvement, and they do. They find another 2 attempts through that middle sector, as Zuba finds 7 attempts over Xander Coffin's current lap time with a 2:02.309. An amazing first lap in that Ferrari, really putting the namesake of the Ferrari on top here at Spa. But this Cadillac, you gotta love the sound of it. But you need to see if Xander can live up to the potential with a huge wide spin on the rear of the car, really messing up that final chicane. Might still find some lap time improvement, but won't have it anything to challenge. And you do see a final improvement in that final sector as well. But with 3 minutes left in the session, is going to park it up and return to the pit lane, potentially for new tyres, but there's not a lot of time left.
No, it might be able to get 1 lap in there, but the tyres won't be available to really get going. I mean, they have 16 tyres, so they do have a quality set and 3 sets of tyres for the race. So we don't know if they're going to be going out again. I doubt that really, but Zuba coming out there with a 2:02.3, so really showing that they actually have the pace and ability. And Fish is the only other person on track right now. Did have that improvement as we have a crash coming out there, going too fast at that very long left-hander. That's going to be a yellow flag out from there.
Getting caught on the long left-hander and just sliding off into the wall. Surprised not to see the rear wing falling off of the car, as that was a very heavy impact. We get to see the onboard, the tyres completely lose the grip, and you just see them slamming into the wall. Thank God this is a game, because that was quite a heavy impact.
That was a massive incident coming out from there. You hope you don't see that stuff in the race. I mean, they're going to be running low wing because it is, it's one of these tracks where you have to run a low wing, just because of the long straights going up the Camel Straight, etc., and going into Plongement. But God, if that's what we're going to be seeing now, I really hope that they can keep it on track for the whole race, because the conditions that we're seeing right now is, honestly, it's not particularly warm in terms of what hypercars are used to, but it's going to be a little bit colder for the actual session. I think the session starts at 10 degrees, and we're going to have 12 at a max. So just goes to show, when conditions are cold, you don't know what's going to happen.
Drivers typically used to the warmer temperatures. Lucas Fisher going to find a slight improvement on this lap time so far, but no major lap time improvements through the first 2 sectors, and will end up backing out of this lap time.
Do you want
plenty of time to potentially go for another, but if they've run out of energy, they're going to have to come to the pit lane, and that sadly might be the end of the session. There's no cars on the circuit, only 1 minute 20 left.
They ran out of energy before getting to the final 2 corners. They actually had 0% on the... So just for everyone out there, production has additional information on virtual energy that we can see on the side. He was 0% going into the last two corners, so there was no more energy to play with. And of course, if you go over that energy percentage, you're not just invalidate, you actually get a penalty on top. So something that you really don't want to be doing. So that's really unfortunate. No more cards are going to be coming out. I'm going to flick back over to the casters because not going to be much more of this session. But wow, talk about drama. A long track really showing that you can't do many laps. And if you make a mistake, it is massive. And unfortunately, I mean, that's going to be the end of the session for them. So yeah, how can I say? Subaru is back. A couple of the cars in Hyper are doing well, but I'm gonna try and flick up the information of the session quickly for you. But exciting.
Yeah, quite exciting for how few cars, especially for the hypercars, somehow always manage to produce some action when they actually have a decent selection of cars on the circuit. Meanwhile, if you go back to the GT field as well, we had Alexa Gates going on pole, but in the hypercars, it's Zuba leading Xander Coffin by 1.5 tenths, and then we don't get to see the lap time improvement by Lucas Vicious. They run out of battery percentage with the 6 tenth margin for now, but then when we head over to the GT category, it's Alexa Gates dominating the session once again by a huge margin difference. The graphic does not want to show
Nope.
the GT category
Here
for
it
us.
is. There we go.
And unsurprisingly, McDevitt is always in contention, but this time around, your last time's race winner gets pipped by one of the McLarens, Binder, by 4 tenths of a second, gets that second place, gets that front row start, and actually puts a statement for themselves coming into this one.
I think in the meantime, I think we're gonna click to our sponsors, of course, who's helping us out here. Grid Finder, take it away. Right. So we're gonna have cars just setting themselves up for now, but honestly, great start.
Good start for us, yeah. I see the short formation laps is what we're going to get before the 75-minute race. Always love to see a 75-minute races out in IMSA, but unlike in IMSA, it's always going to be a bit of a fuel mileage race as we do run 2 times wear and 2 times fuel usage and time to simulate a little bit of a longer race distance in a shorter time span for everyone here today. Usually find them trying to do 2 stops, but Monza was a chaotic affair where they had to do a third stop and a huge scattered across the lobby difference in when they took the stops caused huge strategy blunders from certain drivers that cost them the race. But as we come into this one, it should be a little bit of an easier fuel mileage affair.
And here's the starting grids for you guys. So, Subaru going really well, going first and going in second. Fisher filling up the last of the hypercar grid. We go into the GT3s. Alex doing well. Binder and McDavitt coming up in row 3. Row 4, McCurran and Gora trying to get some improvements into this race using those powerful engines. And coming up at the end, Wally and Chung win the Porsche and the Mercedes. So, I just know that cycle was a lot longer than expected. This is why you test this thing out before you actually start. We have a lot of new tech today, so this is why you get the absolute madness. Honestly, I think the main thing that's going to be down is down to how well the drivers actually cope with cold tires at the moment. We have, I'm just going to show the session information at the moment. So it's currently 10 degrees. It's really cold. It actually feels like UK actually. It's been that sort of temperatures at the moment. And only about 14, just under 15 track temperature. So it's going to be one of those that is going to be quite tricky for drivers to cope with. It's a long race, and honestly, it's going to be interesting to see what tires they bring as well.
Only a few seconds or minutes away from the race start. They will have to run through this final section of the track as well. Everyone just opting to start on the medium tyres as the check-in and the roll-off ends up heading on their way. as we had the advertisement from Gridfinder, also good to mention Traction, NSC, and Simply Race as well. As you can see on the graphic tied in there in the top left for everyone, they also help bring us this field and competition today. BUSR not only with hypercars on the Tuesdays, you have a 8C on the Mondays, F1 on the Saturdays, a bunch of competitions that are hosted every week, and you should always tune into those as well. But the highlights for this evening will be this LMU race as we round through the chicane and Vida leads us away in that Ferrari. The drivers behind him will want to get a good race start and try and capitalize before he tries to sprint his legs away with that great qualifying pace that he showed us. It's going to be a few moments as they stall before the green light flag shows just before the line, and Xander gets a decent start on the outside line. Will already get that nose ahead, but will have to go the long way around and try and squeeze the leader in to get a much better exit out of the corners. The Titan will tighten on in behind as well. Behind that, the GT car field getting through cleanly, other than Aaron Schong picking up a drive-through penalty on the race start, already compromising their race as Alexa Gates puts a gap on the McLaren behind them already before this start comes on. As Zabita's only 1/10 down, you see the GT car field trying to keep it on the circuit. This Corvette of McDevitt trying to find their way, using the legs of the Corvette over the McLaren to drag alongside and head into the corner. Later on the brakes is the McLaren, but they make a little bit of contact. You see the scrape damage on that Corvette already. You never want to see sustained damage this early on the race, but McDevitt very much impatient behind this McLaren at the moment, trying to eke their way through as the hypercars stay in order going through into the sector number 2.
Yeah, a little bit of contact, a little bit of tip checking, honestly, coming out the first couple of corners from both sides, both in hypercar and in GT3. I mean, GT3 has really stepped up in the last couple of weeks. We've seen much closer action, and I think really showing that we do have competitive drivers do want to go for those positions, and we can already see already a drive-through penalty for Aaron already, so something not the best that you want to be seeing, but like I said, this is a long race. This is 75 minutes. It is going to take a long time before we'll see some improvements. And I actually want to see Current further back. Well, he's getting quite close in the back.
Yeah, Freddie and Gore are getting very close. Freddie's always been such a great starter, able to deal with the colder tires compared to everyone else so much more gracefully, especially on the opening laps. This time, not able to find the massive amount of positions that Freddie has found on previous occasions. Not sure what the graphic says that they are currently in the pit lane. That's a bit of a weird bug going on, a little bit of temperamentalness as well, but they are definitely currently in 9th position, hounding the back of this BMW driver of Bora. We've seen have issues before, but Zavida really on the back of Xander Coffin. We've seen Fisher drop off of the back just a little bit, 1.9 seconds down at the moment, but Xander Coffin trying to keep this Ferrari behind. It's going to be a tough battle between them, but hopefully he can use the benefits of that Cadillac to the best of his abilities.
Yeah, and keeping that drafting is going to be really helpful. I mean, one of the things that if drivers want to keep an eye on it is when you're behind a car, the car in front of you is pushing you along. It's reducing the drag. It's punching through the air and making it easier for the car behind to follow. Because of that, there's one of two things you could do. You can either power through and trying to get some lap time, as see Fisher taking a little bit of excursion at the end there, or you can actually just lift, save your virtual energy, and see if you can get a bit further in terms of getting another lap. It just depends on how the drivers want to play it and how they want to do in terms of pace. So that's really what I'd say is what people need to be thinking about. Do you want to go for the overtake, or do you just want to save virtual energy and do better later? That's going to be something we're going to have to think about later on in a race. But honestly, just looking at the data alone, everyone's pretty much got the same virtual energy. So they're both trying to push at the moment. Let's see how close they can keep it.
Yeah, we've seen it on a few occasions across this season already that fuel mileage and virtual energy mileage is critical for your race. We did get a little bit of a worse exit at the moment through that sector. Definitely able to still build the momentum through the more tight and twisty bits though in that Ferrari we've seen in the last few laps. But the main thing is we look back again to McDevitt, still behind the McLaren of Binder in front, 2.6 seconds. Alexa Gates is completely checked out in front of this battle for second. Well, these two try and find a little bit of a bubble for Mick DeVitt to try and get past through. But as you're saying, with the virtual energy tank, being behind, you can save, you can lift, you can try and extend your stint. And we've seen it be successful before, and we've seen it be a huge favour for Mick DeVitt at Monza, where he really benefited from it, but didn't necessarily still end up with the win due to Alexa's raw pace in the end with the fresher tyres. As he goes really wide, you see just how hard he's trying to push, and you see the green indicator plates on the side of the cars as well, indicating what position they are in raw. It's going for a deeper line to tighten and over, but rides over the curb, so that's going to maybe damage the underfloor, or at least risk the exit slightly, as you really see him trying to hound all over the circuit. A 221 is the pace of Alexa Gates, and these drivers must be so much more compromised than that.
Yeah, and also by them two actually, I'm going to be honest with you, it's going to be Mick DeVitt getting pushed back a little bit. It's also going to mean that some of the other drivers, Mikura and Gora, are going to be more likely to get closer. We'll see if anything happens. It's really hard to follow coming up Radion. You can tell, look, going a little bit wide coming up Radion, it is just generally quite difficult to follow. But if you can follow going up that hill, it's going to give you very much an improvement in terms of, you know, increased top speed. And we're seeing that as the times get closer and closer. And all four cars looking very close indeed.
Always a little bit difficult sometimes to find overtakes in GT cars. Not necessarily the easiest of race crafting situations. Virtual energy tanks and having to manage 2 pit stops in 1 hour and 15 minutes of time is very tactical, and it's always going to be the long game that is the focus. You don't want to damage your car or put yourself into dangerous situations. Unlike currently in other series such as Formula 1, where you see a huge ERS management race against each other, and it's all about how much you want to use that deployment. The overtake numbers spiking so much this season. It's never been the case here in endurance racing. Always lower overtaking numbers and a focus on trying to make the move stick first time around, but still not compromising that race strategy.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think one of the things we have done really with this series in particular is having that 2 times fuel and tires. It's a bit different compared to, you know, what you're usually running, but it means that we have those 2 stops. We have that generation in terms of mixed strategies. When do you take tires? Do you take them in the first stop or the second stop? Do you want to run a mixed set? Maybe a hard tire on the front axle, maybe to help. As actually we have our first DNF already, and it looks like John Binder is already in the pits.
Yeah, John Binder out of the session really early on was racing Mick DeVitt, but now that race will be put to the side as Mick DeVitt will get into 5th position and will now be behind Alexa Gates, as we see Gora also potentially having an issue as it flags up on the sidebar as well, but we have seen a bit of a bug. But no clue what's happened, as it's currently showing a lot of different people in the pit lane, so hopefully nothing too much, but we do see Gora spinning around out of the last corner, as not able to find the traction out of the bus stop chicane and just falling off of the back of the field.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate for Gora. You know, Gora's had a bit of issues with this BMW out of the low traction zones. And I'll be honest, BMW in general, it can be a little bit squirrely coming out because the car generally, the way it's balanced, it's quite light on the rear axle because it's actually it's a lot of weight on the front. That's where the big V8 engine is. But it can be a little tricky on this game to control that car, and as a result, Gora having some issues with that and dropping down the roster. I will just flip that back to interval quickly. So yeah, but honestly, I want to keep an eye back up in the front of the field. I mean, a lot of the drivers keeping nice and close, especially in Hypercar. Hypercar always seems to bring really close action. It's fantastic to see. And Azubu in that Ferrari is keeping close with Xander. Again, these cars are 2 fundamentally different cars. You got one being the Ferrari, a hypercar, one that deploys its hybrid energy through the front axle and relies a bit more on it. And so the car naturally carries lighter fuel. So actually, in terms of it carries less fuel, but generally in BOP it's generally heavier, and so it's a little bit more sluggish. While the Cadillac, always deploying energy on acceleration, and it's always deploying in the rear. So it's a little bit more difficult on the rear axle because everything's being driven through the wheels. But generally with BOP, it's a little bit lighter, and so the Cadillac will be able to get out those corners a little bit easier than the Ferrari. So that's where the balance in terms of these cars are. But right now, Zubi's really getting nice and close coming into into this next chicane.
Zuba really trying to push Xander into a mistake. We've seen mistakes from the drivers before, but it's always crucial to try and pound on the pressure, as it is the best way to make an overtake work in these cars. They're definitely hard to make overtakes work, especially when you're this early into the race, when the strategies are going to be aligning. But into the gravel, does Xander go? That might compromise his exit speed here. Speeder's going to get the run around the outside, and he's going to need to try and get it done before this corner keeps giving the inside line to Xander. He's going to push him to the side, but Zubida ends up keeping it around the outside, and Xander coughing on the inside is unable to keep the car on the circuit, spins out wide into the gravel trap. But with how wide the corner is, doesn't seem to clip into the wall. But with the snaking, I'm guessing he did bounce off of the wall instead. And that's Xander's race going horribly wrong.
No.
As Vida tries to make an overtake around the outside.
That is really unfortunate. You can see the car crabbing already, so there's been some breakage on the rear axle. That's going to be quite a repair for the team to actually go and repair that car, and that's really unfortunate for Goffin, who actually really good race pace, having part of a lead there, but now has to go into the pits for a sizable repair.
It's going to be a devastating moment for the championship leader in the hypercar category. Going to lose out lots of time as he ends up making potentially a mistake or potentially offer the combat on the back end with Zabida, as we now switch over to Wally, who's caught up to McEwen in this McLaren, having a good old race for himself right now, looking really racy and really able to get over these curbs and use the benefit of the Porsche's planted nature to try and take these corners way more aggressively and just short out on the circuit and gain a little bit of lap time. But quite far behind Muck the Fit and it's at the moment, but still a battle for the podium.
Yeah, that's I'm actually going to go back to a replay quickly, so 1 second. What happens when we upload a thing? And here it is.
We head to the replay. We do get to see Zabida trying going around the outside. We see how close they do get as they squeeze into the corner, potentially a little bit of contact between the two cars. But the angle not really able to show us exactly what happens. But when cars get that close together, especially side by side, the air between them will definitely change how the aerodynamic performance and the grip levels that you get between the cars ends up performing, and potentially Xander with a little bit less grip than what they expected is what's setting them around instead of contact. If we get to see the onboard angle instead, he does end up actually clipping slightly the inside of Zvida, but also clipping that curb.
Yeah, that's a really difficult one to really judge there. I mean, both drivers are trying to, they're pushing at the limit. Probably has a little bit of a squeeze out there from Zuba, so it's going to be one they're going to have to kind of figure out there. It's difficult from a, whether you look on the onboard TV, it is really tricky. We always see a drive-through penalty for Wally, so I guess it's probably for track limits. So definitely, it's very interesting. I'll give you that. It might be a bug. I don't know. We're going to find out. But yeah, that's really unfortunate. We'll see if they go into the pits and don't gain any virtual energy. But yeah, we're now at a point of the race now where drivers are going to be just trying to muscle it through and see if there's anything they can do in terms of improved virtual energy. Saving fuel is important in an endurance race. But big drama. I don't know how that's going to go in the steward's room. It's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, gonna need to see extra angles to actually get a proper read on it, because from the angle that we was able to see, we couldn't see if it was the curb or contact with the Ferrari that ended up causing the spin, because it's a very tough decision. Because Zabida looked like it was giving room, but it's still, you're squeezing, you're going for a move that usually doesn't work around the outside of such a difficult overtaking place. So there's always room for judgment to be made, and gonna chalk it up until we see more as a bit of an unfortunate racing incident for our championship leader, who's gonna be struggling for the rest of this race. But Sabida currently in first position, leading out Fisher by over 10 seconds in the hypercar category. Then we got the GT field, always eluding Bender, unfortunately. But we see Freddie coming into the pit lanes with only 15 minutes gone from the clock.
That might be the drop. This is Wally, right? So this might be a drive-through penalty that they've accumulated. We want to see whether or not the UI was right, and it might be true. It looks like a drive-through penalty for Wally this early in the race, so that's going to probably be for track limits.
Yeah, very dangerous to get one this early. It's going to be a bit scary for the rest of the race. You've seen yourself get track limits already, so you're maybe going to see them go a little bit cautious. But as we ride towards Speeder, we're already going to be seeing the lapping of cars coming through. With only 15 minutes gone, we're already into the section of the race where your ability to manage your overtakes on slower lapped traffic will highly impact the rest of your race going on forward. But it impacts your race even more when you're trying to overtake the cars. But it's also for these GT3 cars. Getting these hypercars to get past you at the right time can easily help you gain some lap time on the cars in front.
Yeah, I think honestly, we've already had some early drama already, and we've got 60 minutes remaining of this. So let's see how this goes, guys. I think this is going to be a mad one. I genuinely think that we've had... I mean, this is going to be a game of attrition. And actually, Sector 1, we already have a yellow flag coming out. So I think it's for Aaron Sean. Let's have a look on the replay.
Yeah, it did flag up Aaron Chong, and they are now currently out of the session. We've seen Aaron Chong in practice go around here, and we
Oh
see
my
it again.
goodness.
It's almost a carbon copy of what we saw in practice from Aaron Chong as he goes around. Obviously, practice was not on screen, but just losing it over the exit curb, and the car goes around. That's the Mercedes out of the session and two GT cars. Just as you was talking about it being a war of attrition, we see even more of it as the Corvette and the Toyota both going really wide on that corner.
Yeah, really pushing these back markers in the way that they don't really want to be doing it. The closing speeds at Spa is insane when it comes to hypercar versus GT. These hypercars have, I mean, trying to work it out, they have an extra third extra power. Like, when you have like 30% more power than the car around you, you just shoot by. And I'm just gonna say on a side note, driver that we're currently looking at, bring it up here. Matt DeVitt. I didn't realize this was actually a K-pop Demon Hunters livery. We've been running this for like 4 weeks. I didn't actually realize there's actually another livery of the Huntrix one. So there's a whole group of liveries, and this is one of them.
Yeah, lovely to talk about the liveries here in the BUSR, as we do allow them to run the custom liveries if they do so pay for the premium part of LMU, which does give you access to these racing liveries. There's a little bit of a bonus towards you getting to do the extra sets of races as well. Looked a bit with the Sergeant Boys livery here, but one thing you guys might have noticed is there's 3 liveries on track that are very similar, as obviously the drivers can choose to go down different paths, be creative with the Sergeant Boys livery that we see right here, or try and represent your university in some kind of regard. A couple of drivers who do that is the drivers in the London Legion cars, that being Xander Kaufman, Aaron Chong, and Freddie Woolley, all representing that over there. As we get to see the camo-ified pink livery of Lucas Fisher as well in that Toyota, but clearly with the Legion logo on the back of Freddie Woolley's car, you can see the same paint scheme, the blue colours that all 3 represent.
Yeah, honestly, it's considering this is the first season that we've ran LMU, and people have gone and actually spent their money, and students, I'll be honest, I didn't have any money when I was a student, so to see them running these is honestly amazing, and actually Zupa coming up there with the fastest lap in hypercar, so good for him. See, that is fantastic, and honestly, it shows that people are interested, they want to get involved with the game, and they want to get involved with BUSR, and that's one of the main things that we do, honestly. And giving them an outlet, something to enjoy on a Tuesday evening, is fantastic. And honestly, we're at a point now where you know, we're going to have more action throughout the year, and especially when we're going to winter, we get the new people come in as well as the endemic. That's always the fun bit, and we don't have to talk about that right now. We're only at start of the year. I mean, we're midway through March now, and honestly, I just can't wait for the sun to come, because right now it is freezing in the UK.
Yeah, a little bit cold. And also, we see Freddie potentially struggling with the cold on the circuit, even on the exit of the bus stop. We saw it for the first half, getting a bit switchy, but on the exit, swinging out across the entirety of the back end of the bus stop. Definitely a cold track out there today, representative of the UK weather we've been getting. About 10 Celsius out there for these drivers. As we switch over to the BMW livery, this is a splendid livery as well, but this one is one of the endemic game liveries, WRT, if I am correct.
Yep.
And I just love how they've made this BMW look in that livery.
Yeah, I mean, when Valentino Rossi wanted to come over and do some GT racing in WEC, unfortunately not back this year, so we will be seeing, I think WRT, are they running the Benz livery? I think it is this year, probably. I have to check that. Unfortunately, WEC's not happening till next month, because unfortunately things in the world has, yeah, it happens. But at the moment, I kind of put a eye on the virtual energy. So at the moment, a couple of drivers are pushing. The bottom three are pushing the top. One thing I would say is both Madavit. I can't say words. Both the P1 and P2 for GT3 are looking to save on their fuel. So that's something to definitely watch out for, whether or not people are pushing or not. But might be the strategy just to try and save some virtual energy and try and reduce your last pit stop, we generally tend to see, and we'll keep an eye on it for now. But not too far away from pit stops. A good rule of thumb if you are watching at home: 7% is roundabout the virtual energy that is burned per lap. So if you think about it, 7%, that tells you how many laps of fuel they've got.
Yeah, obviously, with how it works, Monza was a fuel economy race. That circuit burnt through so much due to how much time they spent on throttle. But here at Spa, there's a lot more downtime. Even though the laps are longer, that means you do less laps in total. So it doesn't really affect the overall durability of distance. It's more the types of corners that you have to deal with and how much on straight. As we end up seeing Freddie Woolley, another car, falling to the wall of attrition, losing the rear wing at the end of the circuit at the same place as fellow Legion member of Zander ended up in the wall as well, having to drive it back into the pit lane and having no clue how that ended up happening as the replay comes on board through that corner, goes really wide, drifts it wide, tries to control it, but as they go over the curb, spin it wide into the same corner his teammate ended up in, and then we recollect with him as he spun across the entire edge of the circuit as well.
And Spa has committed another victim. This track, because you're running such low downforce, and I'll be honest with you right now, you have to run low wing if you're running the Porsche. The Porsche is so draggy in this game that it is really unfortunate. You have to run a low wing, and combine that with a car that, if you're running a low wing, and a car that has a rear engine, once the rear kicks out, it's going to really kick out. So, and it's very hard to recover. And so, if you are driving the Porsche, it is a really, really rough track to be on. It's one of those that actually, you kind of wish it's wet, because it would slow all the other cars down and you'd have a bit more chance to actually fight with them. And it's literally just because of the characteristics of the Porsche compared to any of the other cars that are racing in the GT3 category.
Yeah, the GT3 cars definitely having a little bit of a difference in balance of performance because the cars are very different characteristically, and it's been always a little bit of a negative of the Porsche. Sometimes it works so well, as you mentioned, in the rain, having that rear engine, having that weight on the back end really helps stabilize in the wet conditions, but the standard conditions don't seem to help it.
No, and I think, like, as a person, I actually do main the Porsche in this game, so both the hypercar and the GT3. The GT3, it is one of those that is, it's a really good car if you're doing like one lap. But if you're trying to sustain multiple laps with the cars over a stint, A, it eats your tires in the front. It does. You think it'd eat the rear, but it actually eats the front for some reason. And secondly, it also it does generally it just kind of sucks on these faster circuits. So whether it's Le Mans, Spa, even Bahrain to an extent, it just doesn't do well. Those smaller circuits, kind of like Sebring and some of the others, they actually do better. So it is just really unfortunate. Hopefully it's not too bad and suffering in terms of actually trying to stop. And we actually see a couple cars in the pits already with McKay, Gora, and Wally, who were pushing, as we saw the virtual energy graph a little bit earlier. They were pushing. And actually the leader is now coming into the pits now. And we see a couple cars coming in now, going in for their first stops.
Decently early to get in these first stops, but we have made it a decent way into the race so far. The pit stops in WEC, nowhere near what you see in F1, where they just come in, get the tires changed, and go within 2.5 seconds on average. Here in WEC, they got to refuel that energy, refuel the car as well, and it takes a lot of time. As we're seeing McDavid trying to get back around to go to the pit lane with 4% battery, it's going to be suspecting to see both of these cars who have been able to get an extra lap still come into the pit lane one more time. It will potentially save them a whole little bit of energy to be fueled later in the race, which will save a little bit of time as well. But the main priority factor in this race at this point is just trying to extend, trying to make sure you manage for later, not run out of fuel by overestimating the distance you can go. But we're going to ignore the rain chance of 65,000%.
That's a float error if I've ever seen one.
Rain is definitely turned off for the series, and Freddie Wally has got another
Oh
drive through
no! Not again! Oh no, Wally! You've had 3 drive-through penalties this race.
2 drive-throughs, and then an extra excursion to the pit lane through collision as well. Self-driving mistake. Able to get himself some attention on stream, that's for one, but maybe not the reason you want to be getting attention, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate for Wally. I mean, good for repping the Porsche. I mean, the Porsche is one of... I find this car really tricky. It's a very tricky car, but it's probably one of the most... Okay, someone's going to murder me if I say this. One of the most authentic Porsches in sim racing. Because it has that very much understeer on exit. It is a car that is quirky and can be quite difficult. And any cup driver who drives in iRacing will know as, oh my god, that is an iRacing, that is an F1 line if I've ever seen one. I don't know about you, that definitely reminds me of how the pros were doing the F1 line a couple years ago.
Yeah, the F1 game's not the most realistic, so you can kind of just run it over, and the car doesn't have any kind of performance hampering, as we see a really wide line for that corner. Definitely a line that isn't necessarily actually beneficial in GT3 cars. It's always a little bit odd to see it happen in F1 anyway in the first place, but you just extend the limits of the tracks in these slower GT cars when you really don't need to be. Sadly, at the moment, a little bit of a pit stop lull as the cars are starting to drift apart. Hopefully, they do come together with different alternate strategies colliding later on, but right now, a bit of a difference in strategies, so a little bit of time to talk about these racing lines a bit more.
Yeah, I think Spa is very much, I mean, I'll be honest with you, this corner is just going to ravage. A very annoying corner because it's off camber, so the corner is shaped so that it pushes the car away from the center, which is quite difficult. It means that the car, you got to get your braking right, or else you just fall off the corner. And it's done many times. I think both drivers have done really well in terms of controlling that. But honestly, out of all the corners on this track, it's the one I hate the most because honestly, it is one that is just, it's slow, it's annoying, and by far it is just. Ugh.
As we look back to the engine, obviously Xander Coffin had that incident, so he's going to be on an alternate strategy. 8 drivers left, 3 still of the hypercars for Xander Coffin. way off in the distance due to the collision that he saw. Alexa Gates dominating the way in first in the GT3 category yet again. McDevitt in second with 7.2 seconds the gap at the moment. Not the biggest it's been. We've seen it come down a little bit, but still not as close as McDevitt would like to see it. McEwen behind that, 10 seconds adrift, and then Gora 22.9. Not a display for Freddie Wally, as they are quite far behind, but hopefully that does come back to us at some point.
Yeah, just a little bit of an update. So Binder actually had a disconnect on their end. I do actually know about their current issues. Actually had a bit of effect in the ACE series that they were running that they were running last night. It's really annoying. It is just internet problems. It is the internet racing scene. You know, you are going to have problems in terms of connections, or if your own connection is just terrible. And believe me, as a person who ran a series on a USB dongle, I know the struggle as a little bit wide going up Radeon there for the Corvette driver. But yeah,
I've seen a bit of a struggle from McDevitt, but that must be an absolute struggle on a dongle.
so back in 2022, so real oldie here. I should be getting my walking stick by now. So basically, 2022 ACC series. That was kind of like the height, and the first time we actually brought multi-class to our series. We actually had the alum in GT4, and we were in GT3. When you're on a dongle, it was generally okay, but the problem was the dongle would overheat, and so I had to retrofit a fan, a small desk fan, USB fan, and it would be there just to cool the dongle next to it so it wouldn't overheat, and even then it's still disconnected.
Oh god.
This is
How do
why
you deal with overheating internet?
yeah. And actually, in the end, I had to plug it away from the PC so the heat soak wouldn't actually soak into the dongle, so it wouldn't overheat. So I had this like USB extension to it, so it was on the side of a desk, and then you put a fan on top of it to try and cool it down so it wouldn't disconnect because of thermal throttling, and then eventually it's shutting down. We have a yellow flag out for Coffin there.
There's a bit of an awkward spot to end up going around. It's before the offhand corner, so potentially coming out of the section before having it. Oh, yeah, no, a bit earlier than that, actually. A little bit higher up the hill. Actually, unable to tell where it was because I just held off angled. You don't usually see that, as we see them in this replay getting very tight on the curb, and the car just looses out on the back end because the car's on the curb a little bit longer and potentially on throttle a bit too soon.
Yeah, a little bit too keen on there on the throttle. I mean, I will say the Cadillac does like to kick out its rear because it's a compared to other cars like the Porsche or even the LMHs that use turbochargers. This car is a 5-liter V8 engine. It's massive amounts of initial power compared to a turbocharger where you have a little bit of lag between you pressing the throttle, the exhaust gas is coming out spinning the turbine, and that turbine giving you additional energy. And so it actually replicates in the game pretty well, and it means you do actually have a little bit more initial instability. You can actually see the car wiggling a tiny bit there. It can be kind of alleviated with higher TC settings, but higher TC settings can slow you down. So it's a bit of a balance, and unfortunately, Covent found the balance a bit unfortunate for them, coming out to Ravage and making that mistake. And unfortunately, it's going to be a spin in what's already been quite a tumultuous, tumultuous race, unfortunately, caused by that contact with Zubi back earlier in the race. So we'll see how well they recover. They currently got 30% virtual energy, so it means that they are going to get a long stop to the end. We're 41 minutes in. I highly doubt they'll be able to do this with one more stop, but we'll see how this happens. We've got, like I said, we got 40 minutes left, 41 minutes left. So see how it goes. It may be a mammoth run, but it's a lot of time to gain back, because right now I'm going to just put it over to the gap. Right now, they are more.
Oh, it seems to be in sync for them and Fisher. Okay, now it's changed to being a lap down.
Actually, a whole lap down. So really unfortunate, but in the end, they'll still get quite a few points to their championship. So it's good to see them, and good to see that was it a London esports livery.
Yeah, as we can see them passing that WRT of the BMW, Gora have been a consistent staple across these races. Not necessarily one of the fastest driver, but always great to see them still trying to compete nonetheless. One of the main things about this league is just trying to get people to compete, get that little bit of a motorsport fix, but also improve yourself. We've seen it in the F1 games, one of the main titles we've seen for many a season now. Some drivers have joined the season many years ago and they're now in a spot where they're challenging at the front.
Yeah, honestly, it's really good to see. I mean, there's some drivers who've been doing it for a long time. I mean, Alexa's been doing it since before me, and I was back to 2022. I think Alexa's been doing it since 20, at least 21, 20. I might ask her I might ask her at the end, if they do come up low. They're currently in third position, but they do have a 30% improvement in terms of virtual energy. So I don't know if they've. I will bring up the number of stops. So let me just bring that up there for now. So Alexa has actually gone for a second stop. So maybe this is a bet. I wonder if Alexa's gone for an earlier stop and is going to try and see and get it to end and have the track position.
I'm not necessarily entirely sure on how this goes too much, but yeah, taking a much earlier stop as Alexa Gates, hopefully not for damage or any other issues that they may have ran into. But if this is the strategy they're going with, there's 40 minutes left of this race. That's going to be a really long way to go.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure if it's possible.
It's going to be difficult, but if there's anyone that could try and do it, Alexa's probably one of those people who could probably extend it. It means they're going to have to be a little bit more conserved because they're going to have to try and get through the end of the race. I will have a look I will have a look in our thing if there was any problems that they experienced. I mean, this car is quite lethal going at Radeon. It is quite lethal. It is a little bit squirrely. I have been told multiple times, even before the series started, Lamborghini has problem going up both set of Eau Rouge and Radeon. I'm going to say now, I'm just looking at the history. Alexis had no problems. So this is deliberate. So, yeah, interesting strategy.
Sure. I don't know the game specific strategies, car specific strategies too much, but just based off of fuel mileage, what we've seen already in the race, I haven't seen them make close to 40 minutes so far. So this is going to be a monumental effort, or maybe just Alexa trying to have a little bit of fun and having to give themselves a bigger challenge on their hands.
I'm going to bring up actually what caused that drive-through penalty for Wally. So Wally, of course, having a bit of a moment. Okay, that was just a replay of the penalty itself. We're learning new systems, but yes, Wally in the free drive-through penalties, unfortunately, for that London Legion livery. It's just really unfortunate for them. Currently sitting all the way down in 8th position. And the gaps have definitely extended quite a bit. I'm just skirting around to see if there's anything. A lot of the drivers right now are in that sort of consistency side. We're in the middle of the session, guys. Congratulations. Welcome to the podcast. This is where we get to the middle section, where all the strategies are going to come into play. But right now, they're just following out. A lot of the drivers have to just manage themselves through. This track is reasonably okay for actually managing. There's a lot of straights. There are some tricky corners, especially this one here at Puon. It's a very long right-hander, and you got to kind of set it up in a way that you can carry the momentum throughout the entire corner. Because if you mess it up one, you mess it up all the way across, and you lose tons of time. So there are definitely some of those corners as we're seeing Coffin come up behind and thinking, I want to get through this, and using that V8 motor in the back, getting through that. I can't do what Jeremy Clarkson does with that.
We're going to use some of this downtime. This is obviously round number 5 of the championship here at Spa. We had Bahrain, Sebring, Monza, Fuji, and now this iconic circuit. We've still got 3 more rounds after this one. That means 3 more weeks of competition as well for the championship standings to change. And with this result for Thunder being a little bit lower, this will bring Zavida and Fisher back into play just a little bit. But with them having missed rounds, it will always be a bit more favourable to those who can show up every single time. But next time out, we go to Portimao and then Interlagos and Silverstone as we bring up the current mid-race results. 18 laps done so far for Zvida in car 50 in that Ferrari. Lucas, which is an in real life car. Lucas Fisher in the custom Toyota. About 19 seconds adrift according to the graphic, but I wouldn't trust it as it's duplicating again. Zander Coffin unfortunately over a lap down. Then Adam McDevitt currently leading the way in the GT3 categories with Alexa Gates trying to charge back through on a alternate strategy down in P6, but McEwen right now holding on to P number 2 on track, but might have a huge effort on their hands. Then we go down to Gora in P number 7, William P number 8, and then 2 retirements in Binder and Aaron Chong.
Talk about one hell of a race it's been, especially that start. I think kind of like F1 has been very much fun at the start, except we don't have a whole problem with energy starvation here. If anything, we're just optionally starving them to get some more interesting racing. Maybe F1's doing that as well. I don't know. But we're at the point now where drivers are really trying to maximize their virtual energy output. We can actually see a little bit of improvement there from Medvedev. Compared to McEwen, who's definitely going to be pushing, having that marginal advantage I can't actually see on my thing. It's quite a bit difference.
Yeah, as we see, 67% already on the battery for Gates. Obviously, you can save some, but that's a lot used to make this all the way to the end already. So potentially, definitely switching strategy. But it'd be interesting to see what the lap times have been recently between Gates if you're able to get them.
Yeah, of course. So if we just bring up the driver information. So at the moment, currently doing a 120.1. I'm going to put a 1 here. So just for example, this is with the 5th place position driver. So unfortunately, he didn't have a last lap. So it means that McEwen's probably had an invalid lap. Just to put it into perspective. But 2 seconds, probably about a second down from what they're pacing at maximum. I wish I actually had my full view, which had every single lap time. But at the moment, they're doing relatively well. I'm more interested to see if Alexa can actually pull this off, because this is quite a difficult strategy.
Yeah, but definitely pacing it at the moment quite well compared to McEwen out front. Less than 5.5 seconds. When we first started riding on board, that was over 7 seconds down. So right now, potentially got the pace, got fresher tyres potentially as well on a different strategy. Is really pushing the hell out of this car. And it's catching that gap at a rate of not 4 seconds gained on that previous lap time over McEwen. Not quite as much to McDevitt, but that's still a huge amount of time to gain.
Yeah, fantastic pull. Yeah, 4 seconds or lap faster than McEwen. So McEwen currently a little bit struggling compared to Medvedev, who is currently got an extra 10% on virtual energy improvement. So really showing that if you do save the fuel throughout the race, it is going to help you later on. But Alexa showing they've got pace, and actually, I'll be honest, pushing 2 tenths compared to their fastest lap. So probably still has some power to go. Definitely has some legs to push. But honestly, again, whether or not they can do another half an hour with this, I am starting to doubt it a little bit. But we'll see how it pulls out. They have done their 2 stops. The other drivers have not. We're currently about a couple minutes away from stops for most of the drivers, but yeah, it's a struggle. And actually, we've just seen Zuba's actually gone, and I'm gonna bring up. We are getting a little bit of like iffy in terms of intervals at the moment. So if you do see the cars suddenly go both have a lap, ignore that. It's just these tools are new, by the way. These are literally hot off the press, and actually, a lot of series, for example, VMS, who are kind of like the main pro series at the moment in this game. They've just pulled over to this week, and they're already giving feedback. So these tools are literally in development as we're using them. And honestly, it's great to see that people in the community are willing to go out there, spend their time, and I'm a developer, it does take a lot of time to make these tools and make them look as good as this. So honestly, thank you to the people who made it with LMU broadcasting, and honestly, keep doing the work. We have some amazing tools, and honestly, 2.4 seconds now between McEwen and Alexa, so that gap is really coming down, and expect them to be on the bonnet, on the rear of that McLaren quite soon.
Also, Mick DeVitt putting a 2:22 in that previous lap time, was Alexa 2:21, slower than the previous lap by about 5 to 6 tenths, but still gaining 3.3 on McEwen, and then even a little bit less, but still gaining on Mick DeVitt in front of that even more so as well. So still one with the chance, 51% battery at the moment, 30 minutes left. This charge is really on for the Bucks at the moment.
Yeah, and you got to hear that V10. It's great to hear. I mean, this car, it's the last of the V10s, and unfortunately, it's one of those cars that we won't be seeing very soon. Lamborghini are moving over to the new V8 Temerario as we see a Sector 3. Looks like Lucas Fischer's had a bit of a moment. Let's just bring that up on the cameras, on the replay. So going into the last set of corners there, going into the bus stop, and just puts a little bit too much power coming out there, and unfortunately has a little bit of spin.
Able to lock it up and not end up into the wall, turns it around, very big, wide, little bit of a U-E on the back end of it, but now going back in the right direction, still on the correct strategy, still ahead of Xander Coffin and not losing too much time overall compared to that gap.
Yeah, I think it's been kind of unfortunate because Zubi's kind of ran away with this. Currently pacing incredibly well, quite a few seconds compared to the competitors, and it's 25 seconds in the lead. I think you'd be quite comfortable with that. You could definitely take the ease on it, but yeah, been kind of unfortunate for Fischer and Coffin, but they're both just to put in scenario. I am going to check if Zubu's actually a hyper or a student. I will have a go. With Sector 3, we have a spin out. And actually, oh my god, Alexa's lost the wheel.
Alexa is off in the start of Sector 3. It's a little bit of a tough corner when you're pushing so hard like Alexa was. That's going to be a third retirement from this race, from the Lamborghini, from the championship leader, losing their first race last time out. And it will only get worse in this opportunity to rebound on the back of it. Mick DeVitt now has been gifted an opportunity to try and call that gap back to Alexa all the way right down at Spa, as Alexa ends up in the wall and losing a tire.
This is pandemonium for the Lamborghini driver. So coming up behind one of the back markers, gets touched and actually spun from it, coming out of Stavolo, and unfortunately loses an entire tire on the rear end. Oh my goodness, that is the worst you could have had. And unfortunately, it's going to be the first DNF for the driver. I mean, luckily, they are someone who is, how can I say, is in their own category. Will probably win their category, no problem. But in terms of the overall GT championship, it's huge.
This is massive. This might be potentially title changing, especially with what just happened and the position Mick DeVitt is in right now. Going wide on the track limits. Don't want to be doing that too much, even if you are in a dominant position. But
Meanwhile, he knows that.
Like with the racing with McEwen, both times we've seen two drivers trying to share the same points to the track. We've now seen two different major race-changing incidences across this race now. We saw it with Xander Coffin and Zvida earlier on in the race, which changed that outlook entirely, going around the outside. This time, we see Alexa Gates trying to make the move on to McEwen on the back part of the circuit, but we're getting to go through now as well, and they just end up getting it a little bit wrong, make a contact, and end up into the wall as we get a seemingly replay of Xander Coffin potentially running into a little bit of a
okay, that was an interesting one. just had a yellow flag for that come up, but it's on the track fine, so I don't know if that's just a disconnect. I'm actually going to bring a replay of that onboard, actually, of Alexa. So it was close coming in and just touched and then just lost it from just trying to catch it. Just
Yeah,
you can see the car is
seemingly,
being revved.
yeah, seemingly touching the back just a little bit, and that just loosens up the car, and they end up going around on acceleration, and that's devastation for our most consistent driver and best driver so far this season.
Lamborghini strikes, man. I think it's one of those that. What I find it more interesting was it wasn't a Rouge Radion. It wasn't Pouon. It was Stavelon, and it was just because someone they were trying to overtake, they couldn't overtake them, and now it's caused destruction. And the fact it's taken a tire out of the car, it tells you how much energy was going through the car. That's just very unfortunate. You can actually see the lift and coast coming out there from Lucas Fisher. Don't worry, the F1 drivers are doing it as well now. It's just one of those things in terms of trying to get across a race stint, and there'll actually be additional things. I don't know if the cockpit can show it. They're late into their stint, so they might not actually see it. But there's actually these little tiny lights on the side. Okay, it might not be seeable. I mean, it might just be a spectator thing. We can't see it, but there's these little lights on the eyebrows. You can see them flash occasionally in the acceleration of corners. But what happens is, as they are going into a corner, these lights suddenly turn pink, and they give you an indicator when you need to start lifting, coasting. It just helps the drivers. You can configure this in the car itself, and so it allows drivers to consistently, and you can see that they're really lifting and coasting, try and get to the end there. Especially as these guys only have 14, 11%. I'm going to bring up the energy totals at the moment. A lot of drivers are going to be looking to pit now for their final pit stop. And maybe some tyres as well. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, it is the nature of these cars, nature of virtual energy in particular. It is a virtual fuel tank. But yeah, it's the one of the things with this series, you really got to try and manage it. It looks like Fisher is going to go for another lap. 9% left on the stats compared to 13. I think Subaru's actually done reasonably well in this Ferrari. Definitely has the lead in terms of just not making any mistakes, as well as having really good race pace. I've got to bring up the driver 1v1s. Reasonably similar on pace, but again, didn't have that contact, and we'll see how much that contact will make a difference. But for now, they're in first. Fisher very much far behind, with Coffin racing in their own backwater, but Madhavet doing incredibly well, has the best, and McEwen's actually in the pit lane already.
Yeah, McEwen early into the pit lane, very low on battery during that stint. McDevitt had a huge battery advantage in comparison. Coffin with 62% might be able to make it to the end, otherwise we might have to come in for a splash or dash, but definitely will still want to get to the end just to collect the points that they can. Obviously, getting to the end in a race with only this few drivers will always guarantee that you get some kind of points, and it will mean that you aren't able finishing without any points to your name. But it's still always best to get the best result that you can out of yourself. So it's going to be a bit of a poor result for Sander compared to the winning ways they've gotten used to.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to bring it up here just to show you this basic track map of where cars are at the moment. So a lot of the cars now are just going to be trundling away back into the pits. Number drivers will be coming out, and main ones are going to be actually how much Fisher will do. I mean, Fisher unfortunately has just lost virtual energy compared to Zuba, so that fight is reasonably cooled off. But the main one I want to be focusing on is where the cars and the GTs gonna come out. Because right now, so we lost Alexa, we lost that alternate strategy. I'm really sad whether or not that would have been pulled off. But now we're in a point where the drivers have completed their pit strategy, and now we're going to be seeing where they come out. Because right now, Ewan's out on circuit right now. Madovit's come in. Currently, they're just coming out of the com, going into Rivage. Where is it going to put them? That's going to be the question.
Going to put them potentially in traffic as well. But right now, the pit stop cycle the name of the game. 4 drivers left in the GT field, unfortunately, with 2 already got their pit stops down, 3 already. Now just leaving the last one to do the pit stops, with leaving to be being the last one in the Ferrari to do a pit stop in the entire lobby, making it an extremely long distance, which is going to save them so much time on total energy that they're going to have to fuel on up.
Yeah, and they're fueling right up to the top here. So Matt DeVitt's going to be fueling right to the brim. So and they're exiting the pits right now. So comfortably in the lead, honestly. I really don't expect them. They might be on new tires, which means they may have some cold tires on the car, but I don't know if it's going to really make much of a difference. It's going to be more about whether or not you can keep it on the track, because it is a Corvette. It does have a lethal bite, and we will see whether or not that will actually make a difference. We've got a fast final cars. Kind of now getting to the point now we are just going to be seeing the completion of all the cars getting done. I love how Binder is actually in the pits, but okay, the Binder's DNF'd. My thing's bugged. It's cool.
So Zvidag's only got 1% battery left. If we continually see Wally taking the very aggressive line, but Zvidag is able to make it to the pit lane on absolutely scraps of energy. Well done to get themselves here on such an efficient amount of battery usage. This is going to be a quick pit stop for them to get to the end. 19 minutes left in this race. Bit of a long affair. A lot of chaos in terms of drivers getting beat by Spa. Not a lot of on-track action, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think it's been one of those that people have been really competing in their own race, and I think the biggest thing really has been this track. I mean, it's reasonably cold, so it's not the how can I say? It's not the most optimal in terms of getting these cars' tires to work properly. I mean, at the moment, we can just look here. So all cars are on medium tires, so not a problem there. I've not seen any mixed sets at all. It is one of those that, how can I say, it is difficult. It is like these are the actual conditions that the drivers were doing back last year at Spa in the WEC, and having that translate to the game, it is quite tricky, especially if you're running more default setups and you're not really messing around with the cooling package that you've got. So we call it blanking. How much you want to blank out the brakes, and how much you want to brakes, how much the brakes heat transfers to carcass of the tire and heat it up. Luckily now both GT3s and hypercars actually have this capability now. Fantastic, thank you Student397.
Another little difference as well is that, unlike the real life races, the cars here in the BUSR don't have to deal with the issue of a lack of tire warmers. Real life, they don't get tire warmers. The tires start dead cold. They take forever to warm on up, and in conditions this cold, they will stay ice cold and be so difficult to drive. But here, they do get the tire warmers to at least exit the pits with some initial heat, but they're still going to find it cold just how cold it is.
Yeah, I think tire warmers do really help. I mean, we're running tire warmers mainly because there's not many laps in qualifying, so we have tire warmers on. But also, we have tire warmers on because there's not many laps in it. There's half the amount of laps in a stint. So it made more sense just to have the tire warmers on and make it more drivable, more easier, and then it makes the cars faster, and so you have more wheel-to-wheel action. It does mean that you do have, how can I say, it is not as realistic as, cars don't have tire warmers in the actual series, but they also have, they have real life and real physics to worry about. We're kind of mixing up for the fun of the show, and honestly, it really helps. Gives us more things to talk about, more things to see, and honestly, a variable that drivers need to think about as a lockup coming there on the rear end for that Cadillac. It is very difficult going down there, as it is actually Stavolo. It is a downhill braking zone. It's more easier to lock up the rears because the rear is going to be light, and showing there, I like having a bit of an issue there.
Yeah, we've seen quite a lot of issues of rear end sticking out across this race. with only 16 minutes left, the drivers are going to have to now really knuckle on down. Coffin with 36% battery has still got a long way to try and extend himself, but I can't lie. I feel like other people have overfueled themselves a little bit and could have saved some time in the pit lane.
Yeah, I usually expect around about 40 to 50% fuel, fuel, maybe up to about 80. Actually no, give it a lie. It's more like 60 to 80%. They've gone up to 100, so they probably have gone. We're not in a position. Xander's actually made a bit of an incident, a yellow flag coming out there.
Yeah, having an issue through turn number one, not necessarily one you see issues that regularly with, and it'd be interesting to see how that one occurred. Unless he got over the curb, it's a little bit unusual. I see this inside curb also divots down quite heavily, and again, it's another incident for Xander where they've just spun it on acceleration.
I actually want to go. There was a yellow flag for a Zuber there, and actually going a little bit wide out of that
Oh,
chicane as well. So
that's a little.
yeah, I mean, looks like all the hypercar drivers have been having problems getting to this end of the race. Nothing much has changed in terms of the weather, but drivers really are struggling at all points. So it shows you it's not the easiest conditions out there because, like I said, it's a little cold. It's hard to generate tire temperature, and so it might be a bit tricky for these drivers to kind of keep it consistent. Because when the tires are cold, they're more like to slip more because they're just not. It's not. The compound is not adhering to the surface as well, and as a result, car is more squarish, especially on the rear ends. In this case, it was more because of braking potential, and that it does reduce when you don't have as much tire temperature. And so sometimes you have those mistakes. Sometimes they outbrake themselves. It doesn't matter too much. They're very much comfortably in the lead at the moment, as I will bring up the interpol here. Come on now, play
Obviously,
ball.
at the moment, we haven't seen the interval for a while. We've been on that energy screen as it is the main key factor that's going to drive the rest of this race. And the Coffin going to be on the edge to see if they can make it. Might have to do a splash and dash to get to the end. But everyone else spread out quite far with 30 seconds across both GT cars and 36 for Fisher. This one's been a little bit of a lousy one in this back end in terms of how close drivers are. But a wall of attrition is always still a little bit of why endurance racing is always so entertaining, as we get to see how drivers can master their strategies and keep themselves on track. As we ride on board with Freddie Wally,
I think that's a disconnect problem.
having a complete glide off of the circuit problem.
Yeah, I think sometimes you do get that in the replay, but hey, new tools. This is how it happens. So currently, Wally is currently circulating around one lap down in that Porsche, but keeping it going. Like I said, if you get to the end of the session, you get points in the end, and points means positions in the championship. That's going to help a ton. But you do get that occasionally. And at the moment, we're doing relatively well. I'm just looking throughout the timing, so everyone's kind of now settled. I that line is hilarious. I want to try that.
I I really don't know if it's actually helping with that time at all. As you're riding on the grass is going to be slowing you down just a little bit. As we see Santa going on by, who takes the more conventional line in the background. Freddie's been struggling with this car all race long, keeping it nice and tight. Instead, constantly drifting wide, as we're seeing a little bit more here. Potentially on some older tyres, as we're only 12 minutes left of this race. Just trying to make it to the end.
Yeah, I think there is actually a little bit of AstroTurf, and I don't
Oh,
know. Oh my goodness me! Oh, that's a wheel
oh.
gone.
And just driving away casually at full speed. I have seen Wally have issues with their steering wheel before, across in the F1 races, potentially running into another line of issues with their wheel, but absolutely sending it into this final corner, going way wide, and this is going to be another pit lane excursion for Wally as we just talk about how they go wide through the corners, almost as if I've done a cast a curse.
not been the sort of race they want to be doing today, don't they?
The amount of scraping that car must be going through, and they overshot the pit box as well, having to reverse on up to get into the pit lane. Turn the coffin now on 16% battery, potentially also having to come into the pit lane as well. Both of these cars not having the greatest of affairs at the moment.
So a lap time. I'm just going to bring up the driver information. So right now we're doing a 2:03, so doing just over 2 minutes per lap. Yeah, they're going to have to come into pits because like there is not enough. Like, let's just bring the energy up. Yeah, they have to go in and splash and dash this just to get to the end. It is really unfortunate because that collision at the beginning, and honestly, I'm expecting a stewards thing coming very quickly after this race because of it. It is just the nature, again, of really bad collisions. They were very pacey, and it's just sad to see that that's happened, but nature of racing, especially online racing, but yeah, at least London Legion is still being rep, and honestly, it's going to get them some points at least, so that's the main thing, really, is 12% left on them for now.
As we are in the dying stages of this race, we are still left with 7 total drivers on the grid, but Wally in the pit lane for damage for the second time in this race. Spa claiming lives, again, it's a common theme we've seen here in the BUSR and LMU, a lot of lives being claimed. It's always key to note that the BUSR is brought to you by Traction, Grid Finder, Simply Race, and NST for LMU. We also got Sim Staff as well. F1 on Saturdays, LMU on Tuesdays, and AC on the Mondays. Next one coming up will be that F1 race this Saturday. Last time out, we saw a little bit of a affair out in Miami. Always a circuit that is a little bit difficult for the F1 cars, especially with the ERS management that becomes so critical in that game. Next race for the F1 calendar will be Hungary on the 21st of March, and it will be great to see you guys tuning in there as well. ACC's next race will be on the Monday, and if we look over back to LMU, next week we will have Portimao. Honestly, one of my favourite circuits in the entire world. I just love the elevation of that circuit.
It is, honestly, it's one of the circuits I'm very excited to see return to the calendar for F1 because it is so, there's so much undulation, in an increase and decrease of elevation. Lots of the corners are also very blind, so there's a lot of commitment that the drivers have to make in terms of getting through those corners. It is an amazing, and honestly, I've been really lucky to actually be in that part of the world in the Algarve. It is an absolute wonderful place in terms of, it's very scenic. The food's amazing. I do really suggest, like, it is one of those places that is fantastic to go to, and it's always very sunny there as well because we'll love that part of Portugal for the sun and the beaches. But it's also got honestly one of the best racetracks. I think honestly one of the best racetracks in the world just because of the nature of the corners and the challenge that it brings. And honestly, seeing the best drivers in the world do it, fantastic. And we're seeing quite a big lock up there in the rear for that Cadillac. Not enjoying it one bit, going straight into the pits. Oh dear.
Oh,
Have they had a bit of a problem?
that would have been quite a heavy slam onto the right-hand side. Might have broken axle or something if they're not careful. So we might see them have a little bit more of an extended pit lane compared to what they would have liked to taken.
Yeah, that's not good. I mean, you can see there's the car is being dropped a little bit. I wonder if it's been fixed at the moment. Currently is getting a bit of fuel. I wonder if it's just okay. Right now, it's currently being fueled up, so it is one of those that is the gauge. I mean, they are a lap down, and you know they're out of this race very much, but it is one of those that has like that. Unfortunately, that Cadillac. So we are now down to the last 7 minutes of the race. It's been an interesting one because we've not seen too much action in terms of, like I say, drivers have really gone into their own stint, and I think the longer track means that you don't have a lot of laps to really, like I say, we've not seen as much action. but I think it's also been a game of just attrition. And I think the drivers who have done really well here, I'm thinking Gora, I'm thinking McEwen actually, drivers who have actually made mistakes, have lost points in this championship through DNFs, are now looking to gain some points, which is going to help them in their efforts, especially going to the last 3 rounds that are coming up.
Yeah, only a few rounds left of the championship as we see everyone's got plenty of fuel to make it to the end. 6 laps remain here as well. It's going to be interesting to see if we do see any more mistakes. Hopefully not, as we get a nice clean round out to the end, as we see a 2:04.5, not often the best pace from Fisher, but right now it's just about getting to the end safely as he's 40 seconds off of the back of Zavida. And everyone's just trying to get to the end, as we do see Gora still pushing at least somewhat in that WRT BMW as he goes into the grass through that section of corners.
Yeah, I was also thinking actually, like we had a lot of action in AC recently with because they're running more of a sprint style with the TCR cars, and the leaders were actually they actually took each other out and won the races. And
Now,
that caused some absolute drama. I'll tell you that.
you sound like the most mischievous racer I've ever heard of the USR.
It's like I haven't taken out a couple cars in the past. It's still under investigation at the moment, and I think AC, you because of the sprint format, cars are a lot closer for more time, and then it's more of a focus on trying to get as much positional gains that you can because there's only 20 minutes on the clock. But it is one of those that I'm gonna say, if you do have some time, do go watch the replay of it from yesterday's stream. It is a wonderful race to watch, as well as the chaos that it caused. We have had similar situations, and actually what we saw at the start of the race was that example. Xander's had a bit of a off again. Let's just have a look. Again, it's the same corner, having again problems with that low speed traction out of that first corner.
Yeah, having another issue getting doubly lapped by the speeder at this point in that Ferrari. Not the best race from Sander. We've seen great consistency through the first few rounds. Fuji not as clean, but as we get to see the replay then, through turn number 1 they dive on in. Not as tight on the corner, but to still spin it around on the exit of the corner, and then they drive it quite well, and they spin it twice.
They nearly did a stroll as well. Honestly, the thing about La Source, the first corner in the race, is that the first corner on the track is it has a bit of a dip to it, and so that rear right, that the car is is driving all through the rear axle. The rear right actually drops into that crevice, and the problem that it causes is you get wheel spin. Because the left side is moving faster than the bottom one, because the bottom one hasn't got traction, and it allows those oversteer situations to occur. And I'll be honest with you, driving hypercar, you don't want to be taking too much of that corner because you can cause that exact problem. And Coffin has just found that that's what it causes, and yeah, spin is made as a result.
Yeah, as you see, we've said it a few times, they're kind of like a little bit of a hard car to drive in very slow speed corners. We do get to see Xander and this Ferrari on the same piece of tarmac to get to see what kind of pace they're both able to run at the moment. It'll be interesting to see if Xander can keep pace or is faster than the Ferrari, just to see what we could have got.
I'm actually going to bring up the 1v1, see what they're doing. I mean, currently they are lapped at the moment, but yeah, relatively similar speeds to... Actually, can't say that because the gaps are going to be massively different because of that mistake made. But in terms of fastest laps, Fisher is definitely a little bit faster on that fastest lap. It is just a race that could have been. We've had so many mistakes out of his hypercar, showing how difficult they are to drive. They are definitely one of those. They are definitely one of the harder cars to drive compared to GT3s that have the ABS, which helps you with braking. And generally, yeah, you have that error as well to think about as well. But honestly, we're getting to the final points of the race. We've got 2 laps to go. I'm just wondering, who do you want for interviews?
Oh, well, I would say a specific people. Unfortunately, I will have to dip before we get
Oh,
around
that's
to introducing
absolutely
you.
fine, of course. I mean, I can always handle it there. But anyone in particular?
Um, Obviously, Book the Vic being able to get another win and potentially interviewing Svida again, as they haven't been here for a while.
Yeah, I think it's been a really good last little bits of the race. I mean, honestly, it's been a race of who is just faster over an extent. We did have that incident, of course, in the hypercar, which hasn't really changed the results. Honestly, very similar paced drivers. Um, I feel really bad for Alexa, honestly. I think that's one of those that's just really unfortunate. But I think Midtjylland, I think McEwen, honestly, as well. I think that's someone that we do need to come because they've not had a good run. Um, they've had a two DNFs in the last two rounds that I remember, and I don't think they were there for last week. Let's see how they are, how they're feeling. And now we're getting to the last couple of seconds in this race before we get onto that final lap. But yeah,
Yeah, with the pace that the throw is going, we'll be crossing the line with 20 seconds remaining. Sander has absolutely been catching into this gap that Sveda's going with at the moment, as we see Fisher going roughly the same pace as Coffin. We're clearly seeing that right now, Speeders is just kind of coasting to the end. 8% battery will have enough to make it round this lap. Potentially had to save just a little bit, though, to make sure they can make it to the end. It's going to be a little bit of a dash towards the end now, though, with Xander behind this Ferrari, challenging him down in the dying stages. Unfortunately, laps down on this Ferrari as well, but it's nice to see two hypercars sharing the same piece of tarmac for the first time in a while. It's been a very long time. I think the last time we saw it actually was the incident between these two over 45 minutes ago at this point. Happened before even the first round of pit stops had occurred. So that's got to be a long time ago. Now, the GT cars will also have to finish out their laps as well. Everyone's got plenty of energy to make it to the end. As we see just one more piece of traffic in front of this Ferrari, who was completely pulled away from Sander on this lap. It all completely dropped off into the background as we're seeing the Ferrari pushing all the way to the end. 4% battery. Gotta be a little bit careful, but that should still be comfortably enough to make it to the end. And just showcasing on the previous pit stop, but also this pit stop as well. Perfect energy management. 1% was in the pit lane on that previous stop. Been dominant all race long. Has a little bit of an incident that will most likely get investigated into the race. But it's so hard to make a judgment call as we go through that corner where that incident occurred. He was so grey and white. It's not necessarily easy to call no matter which way round you see the incident, but they will still nonetheless come across the line with perfect energy management and take the win here at Spa-Francorchamps by over 40 seconds over Fisher behind. Coffin will come through in third position as we see Wally come across the line as well in that GT car. With a few now heading over to McDevitt in that Corvette. Dominant race after the issue of Alexa Gates, who took a different strategy, got back behind McEwen, trying to race back through the field, ended up having issues. McDevitt, ever since then, has kept it cool, calm, collected, and will now be gliding through the back end of this circuit as Fisher will come across the line in P3 in the hypercar category, and Gora down in P number 5. Chong and Binder binning it a little bit earlier in the race as well. 3 retirements across the GT category, but now McEwen and McDevitt, the last 2 drivers on the circuit yet to finish themselves out at this long race at Spa.
oh, nothing could be said better than a definite upset, I think, for this one. And I think Medvedev has, I'd say, has absolutely taken that opportunity home with the final corners remaining. Honestly, one of the hardest, notoriously the hardest car in GT3 to drive, the Corvette. Being, honestly, the one on top, and honestly, impressive to keep it on the track on a car that is very difficult to run on this track, but that's going to be a win in GT3 for Matovic in that lovely Sergio Boy liveried Corvette.
Yeah, nice to see McDevitt take another win. That just leaves McEwen, who's got the bush stop chicane in this McLaren. Only one to drive survive this race. We do have three McLarens consistently competing in this championship. Sadly to see two and an early DNF from the other one. But as we go through the final chicane, there will be the final ones across the circuit. And with that, I will sadly also have to depart and leave you with the rest of it.
No worries. Thank you for your services. Have a good evening, and we'll get some interviews going around now. So, just a look at the session results. Zuber going first, second with Fisher coming with a down. Actually, we have some problems there with the delivery. Do find it a little bit buggy with the way it is. But first, with Zubu, Fisher in second, Coffin in third, with the G3s and Madovit in the Corvette going fourth, fifth, fourth or first in category, fifth for McEwen. With Gora that the last of the podium slots in GT3, with Wally being the last, just missing out there, but getting a fourth position in that in that race. Right, I'm gonna bring it over back to the casters. Hello, everyone. Gonna be just me for this evening. I'm gonna drag in a couple of people. Actually, I have a couple of people we lined up. I think we'll have these two. Ooh, is there anyone else I want as well? I think we'll bring these two in for now. I think they're pretty good. Let's bring in Muck Snipe. Hello there.
Hello.
So, how was it for you doing that race? Because honestly, it was quite attritional out there. And just have a little, just how did it go for you?
Yeah, reasonably well. Well, obviously at the start of the race, one of my main competitors from Swansea unfortunately conked out with internet, and then some things happened with Alexa at the front, and then like they had to DNF. I don't know what happened with them there, but either way, from then on, it was just a relatively smooth and safe drive. I mean, I decided to go for a little challenge and did no tyre changes again, just like last week and the week before. So yeah, I did alright. My best lap was actually my last lap.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. I mean, in terms of it compared to what we had prior, I mean, this was honestly, it was kind of a cold session. And so, how was it in terms of doing a race stint for you in that car? Because honestly, it is really tricky out there. Just
Well,
from seeing the instance we saw.
oh, it's especially tricky considering that the car that I was driving, the Corvette, is notorious for being a bit on the snappy side, just to say, and the setup did not do much justice. But like even during qualifying, I was still setting it up because it was murderous at Eau Rouge.
Honestly, I'll be honest with you, it's impressive to see you actually keep it under control. As a person who drives the Corvette, sort of a love-hate relationship with that car. I'll be honest, do you feel like this was definitely one of the harder tracks for the Corvette? Considering you have already driven 4 rounds, how do you feel driving that car?
Reasonably comfortable. I think, well, with the way that I'm handling the races, I'm driving very much under the limit of the car just to try and save the tires and fuel. So it generally doesn't become a huge issue, but in problem terms, like Rouge Spa or last week where the old chicane was, which we had a bypass on, that was a bit of a tricky corner. But other than that, it's relatively smooth sailing, I'd like to say.
That's awesome to hear. Well done for your winning category. And honestly, Um, it is really, it is so happens that you have your competitors unfortunately have various issues, but
Yeah,
that is
it
the
was
nature of
unfortunate.
racing, really. And congratulations for that.
Yeah, I say make do with what you can. Thank you very much for having me.
No worries, man. Have a good evening.
You too.
I'm now going to bring in a Screwy Capybara. Actually, I'm going to bring in the race winner for P1, but yeah, let's bring Screwy Capybara in. Hello there.
Hello.
Hello there. I just want to have a little talk in how your race went.
I mean, it went all right. I was just kind of making sure that I didn't crash into anyone at the start, and then after that, it was just let's say a smooth sail towards the end, trying to make sure I pitted and kept enough fuel.
So, oh god, just remind me what car you were again. I am just trying to.
I was the 71 McLaren.
McLaren. So I remember, really, you were. It's been quite difficult with the last couple races. We've had a couple of DNFs and stuff. How does it
Yeah.
feel like with this race in particular, making it to the end, actually getting up there into the podium positions, considering your pace that you have and you've existed in this? How have you felt? How you felt in this race compared to prior?
Yeah. You know, in the last race, I had some wheel problems. The wheel just felt that bubbly, and I couldn't keep it under control. So that's
Mm.
it was unfortunate in Fuji. And in previous races, I've been racing with the likes of Gora, and I found that really slowed me down. So what really helped me, I think, in Spa was that we all spread out pretty quickly in terms of the front pack went, and I was kind of left on my own. So that really let me just get my head down and watch my fuel, because that's what got me out of Monza was I had to DNF because I ran out of fuel. So
Okay.
being able to just get my head down, keep the fuel going, and just watching out in front to make sure there was no collisions.
Well, it's awesome here, and honestly, it's great to see you back and getting up there. So honestly, fantastic, and hope to see you next week and continue that. As how do you feel with Portimao?
I really like Portimao. I think the McLaren feels really good on there, and I think the Corvette will also have a really fun time because I find the Corvette is very oversteery there.
Well, you have I think take the riches where you can, and well done for
Yeah.
your second place.
Oh, thank you very much.
Right, let's bring in our winner overall. Hello, James, and congratulations on that win.
Thank you.
So, how can I say? Quite an eventful start to the race, I will say, and overall controlling form at the end. How do you feel your race went overall, considering everything that went on?
Ironically, it's probably been my cleanest one so far, even with the contact.
Okay.
No pit lane penalties, so I've improved on that. But yeah, I did just look at the replay now, and I think really unfortunate contact that we had.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that when you're rubbing at such high speed, it is very tricky. And of course, being a game on game that we're playing over the internet with the latency, things can happen with netcode. And I mean, if you're an iRacing driver or something, you definitely know what netcode is. And I think LMU, netcode is pretty good in this game. It can happen. I'd say to you, how was it feeling in the Ferrari for you in terms of Spa? Because some of the drivers were struggling out there with the conditions in terms of it being a bit cold, a bit difficult to warm up tires. How do you felt the Ferrari was over a race stint?
Didn't feel too bad. I think probably used the rear tires up a little bit more, but I think wrong compound in that race. I think we all stuck with medians. We were comfortable with that, and I think in the end, temps were just low and just cool enough that softs would have been a better bet for the race.
And I think now we're going to be looking into it. We're going to go to Portimao next. How are you feeling taking the Ferrari to Portimao?
Yeah, it should be an interesting race there. I don't think I've driven it on this game yet, so it could be an interesting challenge.
Well, I'm going to be honest. As a fellow hypercar driver, Portimao is definitely it's fast just in terms of the acceleration and the corners come quickly. So I'll be honest. It's going to be a good bit of fun. If anything, it's a good bit of practice. And I do really. I think it's going to be good to see a bit more action. It's good to see honestly more hypercars running in the race. That's the main thing. So thank you very much anyway, and congratulations on your overall win. And we're half through the season now, so a couple more rounds to go, and hopefully more to come. So thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And with that, we come to the end of the show. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. It's been, like I say, a little less eventful. I think we definitely had one of those F1 style races where it was very eventful in the beginning, and then it kind of settled into it. And I think the overall pace kind of determined the end of that race. But for now, thank you everyone for tuning in, and of course, do come out and support our sponsors. Of course, Gridfinder especially for helping put on these races, as well as Simply Race, NSE as well. We will be back next week for round 6 at Portimao. One of those races that are going to be a little bit hotter, a little bit more difficult on the tires, and definitely a lot more challenging for the drivers. So thank you very much for everyone. Thank you for Kieran, who's had to go off, but thank you very much. And we'll see you next week. Good luck, everyone, and have a great evening. Stay safe, everyone.